is up, everybody? It's the return of the Vish Kumaran show here on this platform. It's nice to be back. It's been a while, and I'm here with what Larry Krueger, our friend, calls the big show. He's at a baseball coaching meeting for his kid, so he'll be joining us a bit later. But holding the fort down before he joins us is me and my pal Jessie Naylor. What's up, Jesse? How's it going?
Fantastic, Vish. Glad to be doing the show with you. We'll see if Larry's able to join or when he's able to join. But either way, man, you and I carry on. I think it'll be good.
100%. Jesse, before we start, I just found out some big news before the show, or it confirmed some news that your friend told me, which is that you're actually going to this game on Sunday. So one, how forward are you looking to that? Two, are you any more nervous? Are you less excited? Like, how are you feeling about that? And then three, what kind of guy are you when you watch the game? Just me personally, when I go to games, I don't really enjoy them because I feel like I'm unable to see all the things I want to see, and I'm not a big stadium atmosphere guy. And I like watching games in quiet environments. It's almost like taking a test for me. It's like that's the fun. It's watching it, and I don't get to do that in a game. So are you like I'm still zeroed in on the game, like I don't care what the crowd is doing around me kind of guy, or are you let me get rough and rowdy and yell with everybody else and get going and feel the stadium vibes? There's a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
I'm not. I'm a little bit of both. It depends. Like if it's a big play, I'll definitely get into it. But I do like to focus in on what's going on. In between plays, I'll definitely talk though. So if there's fans around me, usually I'm at opposing stadiums. So it's a lot of like trash talk, just for fun or what have you, nothing real
Mhm.
serious. And when the one game I went to Levi this year, I was definitely talking with people around me, high fiving them between plays, that type of stuff. But when the play's happening, or they're getting ready to take the snap and get up to the line of scrimmage, I'm definitely locked in. But as far as this game goes, yeah, man, I'm super excited to be there. I don't know, the nervous energy of being a fan really hasn't been there for most of the season. The one game that it hit me was the Eagles game.
The Eagles
Just
game?
everything that had led up to that game, as soon as that thing kicked off, it was like, okay, this one's big. We need this one. All the trash talk, the 49ers need to get this one done. And that was the one. But outside of that, I haven't really had a lot of nerves going into the game. I don't think this one will be much different. I'm pretty confident in the 49ers, but I have an opportunity also. I was telling you backstage that I'll be on the field prior to the game
Yep.
kicking off. Now, the positives of that is I'll be near the players and be checking everything out. The negative is I'm not really going to be able to catch the AFC Championship. And as much as I'm a 49er fan, I'm also a football fan. And I am kind of bummed that I'm going to be missing out on that, but also excited to be taking in an opportunity at the NFC Championship. So
Yeah.
a little bit of both.
And that's really an incredible football game. We'll talk about it a little bit. Before we go to the game, I did want to talk about one cool thing I noticed is happening for you because it happened to me last week. Which is that, hey, my buddy, one of my really close friends, a guy I did the streaming with for a while, Blake,
Mhm.
was, a Packers fan. And we had to deal with the Niners Packers back and forth. And that was really fun. We got to text a little bit during the game. I got to go out with him after the game. After I did the post game, of course, I wore a George Kittle jersey out. I'm not a big jersey and go out kind of guy, but I had to rub it in that moment. It was just one of those things. You have a very special moment this week as well with pretty much the same exact thing. You and Rad, I were the first two guys with Last Second Sports. You guys were
Yep.
streaming together. Then that kind of fell off. You kind of went the 49ers driven channel just like me. And now you and Rad are back, and you guys actually did a stream I saw previewing the game. What's that like? Obviously, you have the on-camera dynamic and talk, but what's the conversation like? And does this feel that much more urgent for you as a fan just because of that talk that might be coming?
Yeah, I mean, we're exactly the same way on camera as we are off. Definitely a lot of banter, a lot of fun, a lot of joking. Truth be told, I am rooting for certain fan bases that haven't seen a lot of big wins. So when Buffalo played Kansas City, although I picked Kansas City to win, I was rooting for Buffalo's fan base. I just teams that have been down for a long time, that they just need a win. And the Lions are kind of that team as well, where I was rooting for their fan base throughout this process. But now it's time to end all that. And it sucks that the 49ers have to do it, but that's the way that it has to be. And, listen, I think Lions fans, Rad told me that he felt like next year was supposed to be the breakout year. They would make the playoffs this year, probably lose in round one. Next year was going to be the breakout year. That's what he said prior to the season. So he should be happy with where they've ended up. Maybe next year is their breakout year. But for this year right now, the 49ers have just got to end it. And it's too bad.
Yeah, I was a big Lions next year guy as well, except I wasn't as, encouraged in terms of what I thought they were going to do this year. I think I had them
Yeah.
missing the playoffs. Talk about taking L's across the board. I'm a notorious Jared Goff hater. I think you and I have had that argument. I feel like I've
We have.
maybe been lower than him on him than I would be of another quarterback just because he's Jared Goff and there's certain things he does that just irk me. But he's certainly playing better than I thought, which, brings us to this matchup. And it's a good one on paper. I think the Lions have more talent than people realize, especially because they have a lot of young players who are probably better than people realize already. And they're ascending. And the Niners are probably a little bit better than people realize too right now, because I think the Green Bay game and them not playing in 3 weeks makes everybody's impression of the Niners be only what the Green Bay game was and not the team that was steamrolling teams week after week, right? Because you had that one national spot versus the Ravens, which changed everybody's opinion, because even though the Ravens didn't really demolish them and the game ended up being a lot closer than people realize, and that 5-0 turnover discrepancy with how close the score was makes it a closer football game. It's looked at as, hey, the Ravens ran through them the way they ran through Miami the week was it the week after? Yeah, they ran through Miami the week after. And it's looked at that way. And then now they have their next national TV spot after being under the radar and resting, and they don't look as good versus Green Bay. So certainly there's some impression that the Niners maybe aren't as good as people originally thought. For me, this matchup, Jesse, comes down to really one thing. And it comes down to the Niners' ability to stop the Lions from running the football, right? The Niners have this complicated issue with running the football, and I'm gonna turn it over to you in just a sec. But there's an issue in this game that I want to explain, because I think it's layered with their issue, if their inability to stop the run. Statistically, it doesn't exist, right? They're the number one regular season run defense in the NFL. Now, that has to do with the fact that they also have been ran at the least in the NFL. They have allowed the least amount of rushing attempts against them, and they've given up the least amount of rushing yards. I think they're still top 10 in yard per carry given up. So it's not like they're just getting gashed play after play. But the thing with this defense is you can get 2 yards. You can get 3 yards running the football. And what they're bad at, it's not their run defense specifically, but it's their third down defense. They're a bad third down defense. They're a bad third and short defense. 3rd and 5 and less, they're bad. We've noticed in Green Bay earlier in this game, the Cincinnati game, the Minnesota game, when teams are able to run the football and they're able to stick with it against the Niners, it's not that they're going to run, 6 yards a carry, 7 yards a carry, and run for 200 yards. But if they can get 30 runs and run for 120 yards, you can get yourself to 3rd and short, where you can be very efficient against the Niners defense. We saw that from Minnesota. We saw that from Cincinnati. We saw that early from Green Bay. To me, this matchup comes down to that, because I think the Niners offense will score and game script will give them a chance. It's how can they get the Lions to stop running the football? Because if the Lions do stay committed and get themselves at 3rd and short, their offense will remain on tick and on schedule, and people will wonder, where's the pass rush? Where's the pass rush? Well, they're sitting in quick game in 3rd and short a lot of the time. So I think that that's really what this game is going to come down to. What do you think of that? Do you think that it's a little more complicated than that? Do you think that I'm reducing the analysis of just the run game versus the Niners defense too much? And then finally, how do you think the Niners run defense is going to do against the formidable duo of Monty and Gibbs?
No, I definitely think you're onto something. I don't think I don't know if it's that simple. I also don't know if it's as simple as what my thought was going into it, which is just pressure Jared Goff, because we know that he'll give you opportunities. So as long as it's different. When you watch them play against Jordan Love, they got a lot of pressures, which didn't lead to sacks. And people are like, hey, we need sacks. Well, Jared Goff walks into sacks. So if you just pressure him, you're going to get sacks, or you're going to make him make some mistakes. So as long as the 49ers can carry on and do that, they should be good. But you are right about this whole run defense thing. The 49ers on the surface do look a lot better than what they actually are. So those of us that watch every game, which is going to be, everybody in the chat and so forth and so on, that this run defense is not near as formidable as what the numbers would tell you. And it's funny because week after week, Vish, I would do behind enemy lines, and I'm doing my best job to try to educate the opposing fan base as much as I'm trying to educate our fan base on the opposing team. And every single week, I would bring up the run defense. And every single week, it seemed like the person I was creating the content with would raise their eyebrows and be like, really? Because the stats don't tell us this. What do you mean you can be run on? Well, let me explain it to you. And that's exactly what's happened all year long. I am interested to see what they do, but then how do they do it? Because the 49ers philosophy has really been playing this too high shell most of the year. You start bringing down extra people in the box and going one high, Jared Goff can make every throw. You can say what you want about Goff, but there's not a throw on the field he can't make, and he has the receivers to go make those plays. So what are you going to do? Are you going to bring somebody down extra in the box and go one high? And if you go closed in the middle, are you willing to allow Detroit to take those shots and lose that way? It is a tough proposition. If you can't stop the run, you're going to end up in a shootout, which I think the 49ers can certainly win that way as well, but it's not ideal.
Absolutely. And I think that the other thing with Detroit, when you talk about, okay, if we're going to bring a safety down in this game, is that you can take chances against their pass game, but the combination of Laporta and Amon-Ra over the middle of the field is particularly lethal. And this is where this is a big Fred Warner game to me. This is a game where he has to be everywhere. He has to be moving around. He has to play with the tenacity that Dre Greenlaw played with a week ago. Amon-Ra, to me, Jesse, is Golden Tate on steroids. Like, that's who he reminds me of. Like, he's that exact same player, except he's juiced up, you know? They gave him a little bit extra super serum when they were creating him in the lab. I'm joking, but that's who he is, and he's a very good player. And we've noticed, I think, about Detroit in these playoffs, that in these high leverage moments, if you can protect Goff, he can make some high-level throws on time and on schedule on big third downs to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Both of their games came down to third down throws from Jared Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown that became, you know, why the Detroit Lions won that game and held off. Let's flip this to the other side, because I kind of want to start the show with what are my worries about this game, because I have a lot of things I'm also looking at very positively in this game. And that's why I think the Niners are going to win this game fairly handedly, but we can get to that in a little. The other thing about this game, Jesse, that worries me on offense, it's okay. Can Detroit run the ball? Will they stay committed? How are the Niners going to stop that? On defense, it's Colton McKivitz basically in this game. Rashawn Gary's a terrific player. Rashawn Gary manhandled Colton McKivitz in that game. The thing about Detroit that doesn't make them too ominous to me is on paper, they do not have a formidable pass rush. They stop the run because they're committed to putting numbers in the box to stop the run. They have a pass defense because they have poor talent in the secondary outside of Gardner Johnson, and they play a lot of coverages that put their corners in tough spots. When they play single high, it's a deep ball show against their corners. Cam Sutton, those guys get beat constantly. I mean, Mike Evans was going up and down the field against them. The thing with them being unable to rush the passer is that they do have one guy who's excellent, right? Aiden Hutchinson's a terrific football player. Aiden Hutchinson is going to line up on that side in front of Colton McKivitz. I don't know if Aiden Hutchinson's better than Rashawn Gary, but him, Rashawn Gary are both awesome players. I do think if there's one moment for Detroit's defense in this game, and that's where we're getting to what worries me, it's Hutchinson, it's him versus Colton McKivitz. I think he can dominate that matchup. What do you think? How do you think the Niners can overcome that one advantage that Detroit seems to have?
Yeah, I think knowing that they're going to sell out to stop the run the way that they do, and it's not because they play 7 in the box and they just have elite players. That's how they stop the run. It is because they do sell out, much like we were just talking about. Do the 49ers go that route? Hutchinson's going to be a problem. However, the 49ers, when there's one really good pass rusher, they always seem to have the best game plan to stop that one guy. And that's what Shanahan does. And there's so many different ways that they can do it. You know, you can keep Kittle into block. You can get him in motion and then get him going against the defense and throw underneath to him. You can just do dump offs to Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. There's so many things that they can do. They can just move the pocket altogether, move the launch point. So whatever the game plan is, and there's multiple ways to skin a cat in this scenario, Shanahan will be ready for that. I believe that fully. So I expect that they're able to neutralize him. Now, what makes this interesting is their pass rush is not great, but one of their better pass rushers hasn't played most of the season. And it sounds like he's got a great chance of playing this week. and that is Houston. So I'm curious to see if he comes back, what kind of impact that makes. They got Aleem McNeil back just a couple weeks ago. He's been making a big difference. So at the right time, the defensive line that has kind of really been relying almost on one guy throughout the season, they've gotten a few more pieces back and a few more pieces back and a few more pieces back. And it seems like they are getting healthy, and we'll see. We'll see if that allows them to be a formidable pass rush or if it still is just one guy.
And look, they have names that we looked at as conventionally good players, right? Like, I don't know about that, but I thought Romeo Quara was a pretty decent acquisition
Yeah.
for them. When
Yep.
Josh Paschal came out of Kentucky, I thought he was a pretty good player. I really like Levi Onwuzurike when he came out of the draft as well. Now, none of those guys have necessarily panned out, so it's just me saying names that I formerly liked who haven't necessarily lived up to that billing. But, it's not like they're completely bereft of talent or names that we've never heard of there. It's just that they have a lot of underperforming players around Aiden Hutchinson. The other aspect to it, right, is that they like blitzing, and they like blitzing their nickel, which is Brian Branch, who's had a terrific rookie season and is a terrific player. I do want to ask you this, though, Jesse, because I think an interesting angle also to this game is, okay, you talked about how, the Niners, excuse me, sorry. I'm dealing with terrible congestion, so there's going to be moments for me that, yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so where were you? Were we?
Yeah, you were
My
saying that
bad.
there's going to be moments, and then that was it. So I don't know where you were going. You had just talked about Aiden Hutchinson, and then you said the thing for me is that there's going to be moments, and then you got the sniffles. So I don't know.
Sorry. From Aiden Hutchinson, where I wanted to go, I was getting distracted by my stuffy nose, is where I wanted to go. Either we have a super chat, but before we get to that, the one thing I wanted to go to is it seems like Deebo Samuel is on track to play in this game. He seems like he's going to play in this game. I think he's an ultimate X factor in a lot of ways for the Niners. But he obviously, in a game like this, when he hasn't practiced out all week, I question how impactful he's going to be, other than simply, lining up and being Deebo Samuel on there. How big of an impact do you think he's going to have in this game? And do you think this is going to be a game similar to when these two teams last met up and Deebo Samuel, I think, had 180 yards of receiving? And was that Dan Campbell? Yeah, Dan Campbell's first ever game as the Lions coach.
Yeah, that was Jimmy G starting the game with a fumble, blowing him out, then having to get the starters back in, losing Verrett for the season. That was a lot of bad things came from that game, but
this
they did get the
crazy,
win.
by the way.
I know. I know they are. Yeah.
This is Vicks Vapor Inhaler. This is what I've been sniffing.
It's not booger sugar. It's okay.
No.
All right.
No.
All right. So Deebo Samuel, they can't game plan the way that they did last week around Deebo Samuel. They cannot rely on that because there's a big opportunity for him to either not be 100% and end up leaving the game early, or maybe even not suiting up. Most likely he's going to play, but there's a chance he might leave early. Or if he does play, he's not as physical and not the same player. So I think that the game plan has to be built around Kittle, Ayuk, middle of the field. I think they can torch him. I just see a monster performance from Ayuk. If you set whatever you set the over under at, I gotta imagine that Ayuk could really go for 130 and 2 touchdowns in this game. I just feel like this game is tailor made for him. I don't respect those linebackers and drop coverage, and Ayuk over the middle with Purdy. You get the play action game going. I just feel like they're going to gouge him for big play after big play. And Ayuk is going to be the beneficiary of that. So Deebo will be there. I think he'll be more of a decoy. Not that he won't be used at all, but I don't think that you can build the game plan around him. And I feel like this is an Ayuk game in the making.
I'm ready to go there as well. I agree. I think it's going to be in a big Ayuk game, and it should be a big game for the 49ers offense. On paper, this matchup is favorable for them. If the Lions do sell out to stop the run, they're going to be able to gash them with play action and chunk plays down the field, whether it's to Ayuk, whether it's to Jennings, whether it's to Deebo if he plays. I think Ray McLeod can have a few chances to have some plays in this game. Not too many, but it would be, to me, Ayuk and Kittle in this game. They should have a lot of opportunities to make plays down the field. Purdy as well should have quite the opportunities to make plays down the field in this game. I think that's where I really look at the Niners and I say, Jesse, and this is where I question myself too. I'll be 100% frank, because I said a lot of this before the Green Bay game too, and it didn't really work out the way I thought. And I think that there were some other things that I didn't consider with Green Bay, and maybe I'm not considering those things with the Lions. But I'll once again go out on the same limb and say I think the Niners offense should dominate this Detroit defense. On paper, I see too many mismatches for the Niners offense. We'll see what actually ends up happening. But, I expect this to be a big Brock Purdy game.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Brock Purdy's going to have a great game. The weather is in the favor of the 49ers. I don't look at Detroit. I just can't respect that defense. I can't. There's too many holes all over the defense. And that is why when I was talking to Rad during the behind enemy lines, he felt like they were a year away because they need another pass rusher and they need a corner. And that's what he's looking at them going after and attaining this offseason. And he felt like that would make their team complete. Right now, there's definitely some glaring weaknesses. Shout out to the Lions for making it this far. I feel the same way as you do. I could see this game being a blowout. I really could. I'm not picking that, but I could see that happening.
Yeah, pretty much. I see blowout. To me, the game is and this is something that could age terribly well, or terribly poorly. But I do look at this game and it's, can the Lions offense keep up? How long are they going to keep up? Because this to me should be a Niners game we saw in the regular season where it's touchdown, 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 touchdown. Next thing you know, it's 28-6, right? And the other teams barely touch the ball. I think they're fully capable of doing that to this defense. Will it be like that? We'll see. I mean, Detroit has some nice things about them. Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, these are tough guys to tackle in the open field. There's things about the Niners defense that certainly worries me, but I don't know if Detroit is the team to exploit it. Am I just the guy that continues to question Jared Goff, continues to question Detroit, Dan Campbell? I don't know. Maybe I am, but I'm fading them again. I like the Niners pretty big in this one. Can I get a score prediction from you?
31-23. I think what's the spread? It's moved up to 7.5 now at this point. So I have the 49ers covering. I'll go 31-23. It feels like a good score, right? Like I could see. Yeah, I could see Detroit, kind of keeping it close for a half type of situation. But Detroit, that's the other thing, is Detroit, they didn't get the bye week. And Dan Campbell in that final week didn't treat it like it was a bye week. They've been playing all the way through. They've had all the emotion of 2 home games and overcoming and winning in front of their fans. And now they've got to travel on a shorter week than the 49ers. I think this is where the rest for the 49ers becomes very beneficial over the last couple of weeks. And I think that once you get into that second half, I could see Detroit just kind of having a letdown, falling apart, and the 49ers start to make it a little bit of a bigger gap.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Detroit will keep up early, and then the Niners will slowly pull away. I also think Detroit's a team that benefited from just one of the great home field advantage atmospheres we've been able to experience through a TV in the playoffs. Like, that stadium was truly electric, and you could see how that team fed off of it. They had that energy, the way they competed, like all of that was so cool. The last 2 weeks was awesome. Like, I really enjoyed watching that for Detroit and Detroit sports. Too bad it wasn't my Pistons that were the ones experiencing that. You can barely get a person at a Pistons game these days. But, I'm happy for the Lions. But I think that really played into how well they played in both of those games. They're not going to have that in this game. They're not going to have that boost when things start to go wrong. I think Tampa Bay exposed some things that we knew was favorable for Tampa Bay. The receivers on the outside, they struggled to cover them. They got to Baker more than I thought they would, but they didn't get to, Baker was still able to sit back there and make throws. It wasn't like they fully affected and got Baker out of his game. I think Baker threw for 330 yards, 340 yards. He threw for a lot of yards in there. And then their defense, while Tampa Bay's defense wasn't fully equipped to stopping the run and stuff, they got to Goff in key moments. And the one thing the Niners defense shown with Steve Wilks, and they showed it again in the fourth quarter versus Jordan Love, is if you give them a key third down and it's 3rd and long, they can, put 7 guys at the line of scrimmage and create this muddy look for the quarterback and create this sim pressure to make him hold the ball just a second longer, make him second guess it, make him get off of his first read. And like you talked about it earlier in the show, Jared Goff can tend to walk into sacks in those situations. And that's where I don't believe in Goff to be able to overcome those situations consistently against this defense. I'm going to take the Niners 42-28.
I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. All right.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay. Okay.
Real quick, because we're both picking the Niners. I don't want to look ahead, so let's not look ahead as it a matchup versus the Niners. But the AFC Championship is interesting. We've done
Mhm.
these Thursday shows now back to back to back weeks, and we've all predicted these games. It's not necessarily been too great that I've had to predict them on record, and then I realize my predictions as they keep getting wrong on Sundays. Like, why would I say that and all of that? But we will predict the AFC Championship game here. So who do you
I
think's
had
going to
a
win that
listen,
one?
first of all,
And
I had a rough first week. I think I lost 3 of those games. Bounced back big though last week. Went 4-0. So now, see, I went from like just being down and being like, "Hey, whatever I pick against it." Now I'm kind of confident. Like I know what the hell's going on all of a sudden. So, I feel pretty good about things right now.
oh, okay. You know what I knew though. So last week I picked Tampa Bay and I picked Kansas City, but I really wanted Buffalo to win. And I
Mm,
kind of picked Tampa Bay to put like good juju out there that, excuse me, they would be the underdog that wins. Cause like, 4 favorites are not winning in a
yeah,
divisional round weekend. Like, come on, ever since DraftKings Sportsbook has come out, Goodell, we know what your bag is about. And I once Detroit, won that game, it was almost like a guarantee in my head that Kansas City was going to make it insufferable. And yeah.
they did. They did.
So who do you like? Kansas City, Baltimore.
I mean, this is a really good game.
Yeah.
It's funny because, the 49ers over the last few years have been known as the defense in the NFL, the defense, the
Right.
premier defense. That's what they've been led by. And talking about the 49ers going into the playoffs last year, I remember talking with David on one of the post-game shows, and I've kind of stuck with this for, through this year. It felt like the tide was turning for the 49ers, and they were actually becoming more of an offensive team than a defensive team. And it sounded crazy because at that time I was talking about the number one defense, but you could just kind of see it starting to go that route. Now, the 49ers defense is still very good, but it is clearly levels below both of these defenses in the AFC. These are the 2
Mhm.
best defenses, in my opinion. They've got players on all 3 levels. They've got great depth. These 2 defenses are going to be very, very fun to watch. And then you've got arguably the
2
2
creative
best
schemes,
going right
right?
now. Yes, yes. You
2
exactly from
psycho
the
playoff schemes, like 2 guys that are just
great.
yeah.
That's the other thing. It's not just the players. You got Spags versus McDonald. I mean, 2 masterminds. And we didn't know what McDonald was going to bring to the NFL. At Michigan, he was great, but that was just 1 year. He's been absolutely phenomenal himself. So really, you've got great schemers, you've got great players. And then when you flip it to the other side, you've got good play callers. One's great in Reed. And then arguably the 2 best quarterbacks doing it right now in this moment. You've got who's probably going to be the current MVP in Lamar Jackson going against Patrick Mahomes, who is the best quarterback in the league right now, maybe the best ever when it's all said and done. This matchup is going to be fantastic.
Epic.
But I feel like the Ravens have just a little bit more talent. They've got the home field advantage. And it just seems like the Ravens are a team that are going to get this one done. They're the more complete team. They've got an awesome special teams as well. And when you look at a dynasty in the Patriots, the Ravens and Harbaugh were the ones to slice through that every once in a while. And you've got this many
Yeah.
dynasties starting over here with the Chiefs and a team that seems like they're destined to go to another Super Bowl. How do you beat this team? Well, Harbaugh knows how to beat these types of teams. I believe that the Ravens will be moving on, and it'll be 49ers and Ravens in the Super Bowl, a rematch of just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Man. Okay, now I also have to pick this game. It's a really hard game to pick. I do agree with you. It's a defensive battle to me. And this is a very similar conversation to one you had. Like, are the 49ers going to sell out to stop the run? Guess what the Chiefs and Spags are going to do? In this game, they're going to sell out to stop the run. That's what they're
Yep.
going to do. They're going to sell out to stop the run in this football game, and they're going to take their chances against those receivers, which he's going to like his matchups with L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. in one-on-one coverage versus Aguilar, versus Zay Flowers, versus Odell Beckham, versus Rashad Bateman. They're going to make Lamar, throw it. They had the plan of blitz zeroing Lamar, and Greg Roman had no answer for blitz zero. So it's going to be a really, really tough game. I think the Ravens similarly are going to have their advantages with their defense versus the Chiefs offense. I think I'm going to take the Ravens in this game. I'm also kind of picking with my heart. I do not want to see the Chiefs go to another Super Bowl. Like, I'm over
For
it.
sure.
Like, I need a year break from it. So I'll pick the Ravens for that reason. In a very close game, I think it comes down to a Justin Tucker kick. And I think he makes it. Now, before we move to some more 49ers topics, which everybody wants to talk about, I do want to hit the supers and then a couple of comments. Harold McAllister says, Vish, you have the best intro dope beat. Well, I purposely just waited to bring this up because I do think Jesse actually has the best intro on YouTube. I always tell him, but the fact that you said this to me, Jesse, look at that.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's like a cool vibe. I feel like I'm in a hookah lounge from like 15 years ago every time I come on. Just chill.
Okay. I feel those vibes. 15 years ago, I would have been not allowed in a hookah lounge. Harold McAllister says Lions had a couple of well-timed cornerback blitzes versus the Bucs. And I do want to say something about this because I'm interested on what you think of this. I think this is a Baker Mayfield issue consistently pre-snap. Like when it comes to dealing with pressure and his answers to pressure, this has been one of his consistent issues to me. I'm probably a bigger Baker fan than I should be. People have seen me wear an OU sweatshirt. Like, yes, my uncle was a professor there, but he got me the gear and the paraphernalia from Oklahoma when Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray were playing there. So I'm a big fan of both of those two players, right? And Baker Mayfield is a really good thrower. He's really accurate, and he can throw the ball very, very powerfully when he has time and space to throw. The problem with him is, like, for example, when the corner is capping and it looks like he's coming for the third time, and I can pick out the nickel blitzer from TV, Baker knows he's coming and he'll stand there and still try to not be throwing hot or not get the ball out of his hands. That's an issue for Baker. So while I think those were good calls and Branch is a good blitzer, I think where Purdy differs from Baker is that you're not going to be able to catch him with the same nickel blitz on 3 different third downs. He's going to make you pay. He's going to have answers versus pressure. He's going to have a feel on where to get rid of the ball and do that. And so for me, that there is a difference with the Lions having a couple good blitz calls and a couple well-timed blitz calls, because I do think Purdy's advantage in this game and where he differs from Baker, though he doesn't have the same superior arm strength as Baker, is that he just plays with much more feel and he plays much quicker than Baker. To me, Baker is a gritty player. He doesn't play with just pure football instincts and feel. He's got some football instincts and feel, but he's more of a gritty competitor. Purdy to me is like a smart competitor. He competes and he's gritty, but he plays the game in a very gamer kind of way, if that makes sense, with answers and instinctively. So I did not
He's a
do
lot
a
more
good job of
cerebral.
explaining that. But what do you think?
No, I agree. He's a lot more cerebral than Baker is. Baker, I don't want to say anybody's dumb because I don't know. I'm sure he's a smart guy, but he doesn't play nearly at the intellect that Brock Purdy does,
Right.
for sure. I definitely see what you're saying.
Would you call it an intellect, or I think it's just like a reaction instinct at that point? Because a lot of people refer to as intellect. I feel like a lot of these guys who make it to the NFL have to be good on the whiteboard, but when you're on the field, you don't really have an opportunity to think, right? It's almost like a reaction time. It's a feel for where things are going to move and where things are going to go. I'm not saying I had the most proficient athletic career, but I did play youth soccer for a very long time. I played through high school. I played through all of that. And I was the kind of player that could tell you off the field what exactly was supposed to happen on a sequence of plays, but I was not as athletically gifted or as inclined as some of my teammates who could actually make it happen and not tell you after the play what happened, but they could feel where players were going to move, how space was going to open up and stuff like that. I think that's the difference I want to say between Baker and Brock, just so that we're towing that line, because frankly, we can't measure their intelligence, but I do think one reacts a lot faster and a lot more instinctively the right way versus the other one. I don't know if that comes. I don't even know how to describe that, Jesse, but I don't think it comes down to how cerebral a player is. And I don't think you were going there. I think you just wanted a way to describe it, but I don't think that's how cerebral they are. It's kind of like a reaction.
It's not that it's application, it's intelligence and application. And you're right. It's just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you can apply it. And just because you can apply athleticism doesn't mean you're intelligent and vice versa. So the way that I look at it is this is where that it's, and everybody talks about it. And it was a big deal with CJ Stroud this offseason, but that S2 cognition, that's exactly what that test does is it takes, everybody knows how to read the whiteboard and go through plays and whatever. What it does is it takes you and puts you in pressure situations and then measures how successful you can be and dial up the things from your memory in a pressure situation so that when you are staring down a blitz or you are staring down a defense in a big moment, you can decipher what's happening in front of you and make the right read in the right moment at the right time. And that's exactly what that test is designed to do. So for me, like that, regardless of what it is, whether it's the knowledge or it's just not being able to apply it in the moment under pressure, either way, Purdy definitely is levels ahead of him in getting it done in those moments, regardless of the reason why.
Yeah, 100%. And then just wanted to shout out to our guy Marco in the chat with Clutch Gene Sports. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're looking out for Marco. He's the man. And he says Jared Goff is still Jared Goff. So let's get into talking about the topic that's the national media's favorite topic, and that's Brock Purdy. You and I haven't talked after the Green Bay game. I don't know that we need to beat the dead horse of the Green Bay game, but real quick, give me a quick summary of how you thought he played in that game and how you project his outlook, given that the Niners need him to play, pretty well for them to win the next two games.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Brock Purdy is going to be just fine moving forward. And I think that it's interesting because I try to remember what I felt during the game. And during the game, I wasn't that concerned that the 49ers were going to lose. I knew that Brock Purdy would probably struggle a little bit in the rain if the prior history of what we had seen started to show through. But I figured, all right, you know what? They're still so much better than this team that they're going to get the win. Now, when the 55-yard run happened, that's when I kind of lost the confidence.
Yeah.
But thankfully, they held him to a field goal attempt and what have you. But I think for Brock Purdy, regardless of what your thoughts are about him, you have to look at what he did in that pressure situation. And that was not, hey, we need a field goal. That was not Cleveland. A lot of people want to give him credit for the Cleveland game and him driving them downfield in that situation. Well, he tried to throw a pick the first play of that, and he hit Brandon Ayuk on a very short out pattern, and Brandon Ayuk took it for a big gain. Right. I don't think that was really him coming from behind and then setting up a field goal attempt. This was not that. This was him completing every single pass outside of one, and that one was dropped, and him leading them down on a drive. I understand he didn't throw the touchdown, but he was the reason that they got the touchdown. He led them all the way down, and then McCaffrey capped it off. There have been a lot of drives this year where the 49ers have started out hot. In the whole drive, it's been Christian McCaffrey, and then at the very end, Brock Purdy gives like a shovel pass for a touchdown and gets all the credit. Well, this was not that. He was the reason that they did it. And I think for him, more importantly for Shanahan, to see that. I know that Shanahan believes in him, called him the real deal, the franchise quarterback, traded Trey Lance, said all the right things. But in the moment when he was struggling in the playoffs in a win or go home situation, you have to wonder what he's going through mentally and thinking in that moment. But now that he saw Brock overcome and adapt in that situation, he has to have all the confidence in the world that Brock can get it done. If he had any inkling that he couldn't before, he believes now. And I think that that's going to allow Kyle to be a looser play caller in some of these big moments, which I think has hindered this team in the past. And I think that's going to allow Brock to be a looser player, as if he wasn't already. I mean, his mental fortitude is probably the one thing that sets him apart in these moments. I don't think he really gets rattled often. The only time I've seen it was in that Ravens game. He definitely, it's one thing to think you can do it, but now he and this team know they can do it. So if they are in that situation again and they have the opportunity to come from behind on a last drive, they know they can get it done. And that is very, very different than thinking you can get it done.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about him in the wet football, because I think it's an interesting topic. Now he's clearly affected by the wet football, right? We've
Yes.
had whoa. Look at this. Look who's joined us. Everybody's favorite baseball coach. Right here. Looking pretty. What's up, Larry Krueger?
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. Put me in, coach. John Fogerty. I want to play center field.
Before we get to the Niners, Larry, how do you deal with, your players? Obviously you're coaching a very competitive youth baseball league over there. How do you deal with players' parents not upset with how much their son gets to play? How do you deal with players upset with Coach Krueg? Maybe they're upset with what you said on the Krueg show the other day. Maybe they're Niners fans in the comment section upset with what you said about Brock Purdy. How do you deal with all of that as a coach?
I mean, I usually look to see, how hot the moms are, and if they're I use a taser. And you'll see them kind of zap out, but they learn quick, and then they once they come to, they totally start to see, do what the coach wants. And then once you get 4 or 5 games in, you'd be surprised how little you use the taser. No, I don't know.
That took a turn to a place I didn't expect it to go.
No, I don't know. I have very few rules. Don't run your teammates down, right? So don't say anything negative about your teammates. Always build your teammates up. We run on and off the field. You play every pitch, so you're not standing there lock-kneed, and because they're 14 and 15 at this point. And other than that, incremental improvement. That's really it. Just we rep everything super hard. So if you want to be good at ground balls, you got to take 50 ground balls. You want to be good at catching fly balls, you got to take 50 fly balls. So yeah, build up your confidence, build up your teammates, and then we steal bases. When you get on first, we're going. And I don't play station to station baseball. I play, let's hustle.
You got an analytics guy?
No. I believe in steal. Get on first and get a lead, and you either draw a throw back to the bag or you go and you steal the bag. So that's really my philosophy. And then just build up your teammates. And the most important play is not the last play, but the next play. That's really it. Other than that, have fun, and let's see if we can win some games.
So Krug, I don't know if you know, you entered the Lion's Den. You entered the real Shark Tank when you came into this show. Jessie and I have already given our predictions to both the NFC Championship and the AFC Championship. We locked them in. We put ourselves out there. We're good to go. Keys in, threw the key away. We've locked our predictions in. I'm giving you the floor.
Can I know what you guys picked?
So Jessie picked the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, 31-23, right?
Mm-hmm.
I picked
very
the Niners,
close to what my pick would be, but go ahead.
I picked the Niners 42-28.
Wow.
Yeah. Jessie picked the Ravens. Did you give a score?
I didn't give a score. No, I didn't give a score. I don't think either of us gave a score in that game.
I was soft about giving a score on that game too. I'll give you like 20-17, a late Justin Tucker field goal. I picked the Ravens as well, but Krug, I also admitted I'm picking the Ravens with my heart. I am sick of the Chiefs. I'm sick of all the success they've been having while us 49ers fans have had to deal with some heartbreak. I think it's their turn to have to deal with some heartbreak. And specifically, I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is just like a very aside thing that has nothing to do with either of you, the analysis or anything. I really want to watch First Things First on next Monday. If the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl and the Chiefs don't go to the Super Bowl, like I really want to see that. I think Nick Wright's hilarious. And I think it would be even funnier if I finally had the game script that I wanted him to talk about. So that's what I'm taking, Krug. We're both going Ravens, 49ers, Super Bowl. We're going rematch of the Harbaugh, rematch of 2012. Give me your predictions. The floor is yours. Let's start with the NFC Championship game. What do you think?
I like the 49ers to pressure Goff in the A-gap and I think the weather is going to be beautiful. It's going to be high 60s, low 70s, and it's going to be a faster surface. Brock's going to bounce back, and I think the 49ers are going to win. I do think they'll cover, but I don't feel super cocky about it. I would say I've got 31-20. 31-20 49ers. I think it's going to be 31-13, and Detroit scores a late touchdown to make it 31-20. So I've got the Niners winning and covering, and I like the Chiefs. Chiefs have we talk about Kelsey and we talk about Mahomes and we talk about the offense and Reed, but the Chiefs defense is really good. So I'm going to take the Chiefs defense. The Chiefs also are 6-2 on the road. They're a good road team, and it's all based on Mahomes over Lamar, and I just think Mahomes is one of the greatest competitors of his era, and I like Chris Jones, I like Willie Gay, I like that. I like the real reason I love Kansas City is I think Baltimore is a one wide receiver team, and L'Jarius Sneed's going to shut that one wide receiver down, like he did last week to Buffalo's top wide receiver. So I think L'Jarius Sneed shuts down Zay Flowers and forces Lamar to go elsewhere. I think the Chiefs start fast and force the Ravens to play from behind, and I like the Chiefs. So I'll take the Chiefs, and I think it's going to be kind of a lower scoring game. I'm going to say 21-17 Chiefs.
All right. There we go.
I have to ask though, Larry, because I feel like you've doubted the Ravens all the way through. Before the first game happened, you were like, well, I don't know if they play Cleveland. I feel like Cleveland can get them. Then they actually played the Texans. I think you picked the Texans, if I'm not mistaken. I thought you picked the Texans. And now you're picking against them again. What is it about the Ravens that you just don't buy into?
And the same thing that I've been talking about is I don't believe in their weapons. I think they're a bully team that, for the most part, I mean, this last game they played great in the second half and they got a really good defense. But Kansas City, once you've played in Super Bowls, you're not going to be intimidated by playing on the road in Baltimore. You're just not. And I just think when you look at the Ravens, they're a really good football team, but they're a really good football team that has to play with a lead. And if you have to come back, I don't love Rashad Bateman, OBJ, Devin Duvernay, Nelson Aguilar. Their number one receiver is a rookie, and he's going up against a big, dominant, smothering veteran corner who's playing at the top of his game. And then I don't see Gus Edwards or Justice Hill or Dalvin Cook really running it on Kansas City. So I don't think Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses. I love the interior line for both teams, but I think both teams have tackle issues.
In the NFL.
Yeah, the tackles though I don't think are great. And I really think that Kansas City can win both ways. They can win coming from behind, and they can win with the lead, where I only think Baltimore can win if they get out to a lead. I don't think Baltimore can come from behind. So I like Kansas City. I think Kansas City is, when you look at Kansas City, guys, they have great players on all three levels of their defense. Chris Jones is a star. Karlaftis is coming on like gangbusters. And then Nick Bolton is maybe the best linebacker that nobody ever talks about. Sneed is terrific. But, Trent McDuffie's a great nickel player, and I like Justin Reed. I like Kansas City. I feel like Kansas City can win more ways. And I think that ultimately you got to have, if you're going to go up against Baltimore, you got to have a quarterback that's not going to be bothered by the conditions or being on the road. And I think Mahomes, Mahomes is the best. Mahomes is on the top of the game. And Kelsey's good in the red zone. Pacheco, they don't have great wide receivers, but Rashee Rice is playing decently. Valdez Scantling had a good game last week. I think it's going to be Kansas City. I actually think Baltimore would be who I'd want to root for, because I think Baltimore would be an easier game for the Niners than Kansas City. But
I disagree there.
well, Kansas City.
I don't know that either matchup is necessarily easy for the 49ers. I think they're two different matchups.
I don't think either.
But what I will say,
I don't think Larry does either.
Is I think conventionally I would agree with your take, but Kansas City this year has also looked like a team that needs to play with the lead. They need to play behind their defense. They need to stay balanced with Pacheco, who puts a physical imprint in the game. They need to ride their interior offensive line, which you mentioned. It might be the best in football between Tooney, Humphrey, and Trey Smith. So they need to rely on those things, because the two things they've not had, and it's hard to tell if they've had it in the playoffs because they've played two defenses that have had to sign essentially the three of us off the street and play them on Sunday in playoff games because they've been, dealing with such injuries, is one, their tackle struggled in this year, right? Like Juwan Taylor, that entire tackle situation, it was not good for them this year. Are their tackles going to be able to hold up in protection against Jadeveon Clowney in them? We'll find out, because the interior of defensive line with Baltimore is pretty good too, with Michael Pierce and those guys. Now, the other question is their receivers. Rashee Rice has emerged at the end of the season and in the playoffs. Are there receivers who struggled all year between Rashee Rice, Kadarius Toney, all these guys? Are they going to be able to separate and get open against the Ravens and the Ravens secondary? So I don't know if this is a game that plays into the Chiefs' hands either. I think whoever plays with the lead is kind of in a better spot. Now, I think you're right. Conventional wisdom would say take Mahomes in any spot, even if he's playing from behind, because we saw an entire playoff run where he was coming back from 24-0, down 10 in the Super Bowl, down 10 here, down 25 here. So he seems equipped to do that. But I do think that was a very different Chiefs team when they were so explosive with Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins and Travis Kelce. This is a ball-controlled, defense-led Chiefs team. And so I think the matchup is very similar to the Ravens in this particular case. I don't know if that changes your mind, but I do think it makes this game very hard to pick, because it's almost like who makes less mistakes in this game. And if you think Mahomes is going to make less mistakes in this game, I'd buy it too, because that's kind of what the Bills game was.
I'm a big fan of Isaiah Pacheco. And Pacheco went for 6.5 yards against Buffalo. He went for 7.2 yards against Cincinnati. He went for 6.1 yards against Green Bay. These are all games late in the year against good teams. I like Pacheco to have some success running it. But more than anything, I'm taking Mahomes over Lamar. I like Mahomes more than Lamar. And I think the Ravens are, you look at the Ravens, they got to get turnovers. And I think Patrick Mahomes is going to play better in the playoffs than he's played in the regular season. The Chiefs look to me like a team that just once you play in the Super Bowl, it's like you don't really bring it every week in the regular season. But Mahomes is still in his prime. He's an awesome competitor. And, I just like what I've seen from Mahomes. I mean, he's got one interception in the last 4 games. He doesn't have great weapons around him. But, the one thing about Mahomes that nobody ever talks about is he will get out and run. He had 6 carries for 19 yards. He had a 24-yard run against Buffalo that was a crusher. He had a 28-yard run against Miami that was significant. It's like he knows when to run. I'm not going to go against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I would if I thought they were a true flawed football team, but they're not great, but they're not flawed. It's not like they were in Tampa when they went in the Super Bowl against Tampa, where they had just no offensive tackles to speak of, and he was running for his life. They're playing pretty well. They just went into Buffalo and scored 27 on a pretty rugged Bills defense. Didn't turn it over. Mahomes had a 131.6 rating. Mahomes is playing well enough, and Chris Jones, Snead, Bolton, awesome players on all 3 levels of their D. And if Baltimore, if like Rashad Bateman had come into his own as a player, or if they had like a couple of really good receivers, but they don't. They got a rookie receiver who's their number one guy, and
As do the Chiefs.
Yeah, but the Snead, but they don't. Snead is a dominating corner. I mean, he's going to get paid huge in free agency, and look what he just did to Diggs. I mean, he just bottled up Diggs. So if you can bottle up Diggs in Buffalo, you can bottle up Zay Flowers.
I feel like everything you're saying about the Chiefs, I can also say about the Ravens, right? Like I could say, well, the Chiefs don't have a lot of weapons.
The Steelers
I mean, outside of Kelsey,
Diggs in Buffalo,
but the Chiefs do have weapons. They just don't have depth of weapons. But they've got a better back than Baltimore's back. They got a better tight end than Baltimore's tight end, and they got a better number one receiver, I think, than Baltimore's number one receiver. When you're taking who's covering.
Rashee Rice over Zay Flowers.
I'm taking
Marlon Humphrey's a damn good player.
Yeah, but Snead. I mean, have you watched Snead in the last 6 weeks?
I think Snead's the best corner in the NFL.
He's the best. Really
best corner in the NFL.
He's going to get paid super big, and he's smothering. He's smothering. I like Marlon Humphrey, but isn't Marlon Humphrey less than 100%? I mean, the Ravens are good. Yeah. These are. I mean, that's why that's why this game's in Baltimore. The Ravens, to me, are the argument for the Ravens is that you would say, well, Kelsey's going to be totally, neutered or neutralized by the middle of the Raven defense, right?
Right.
Because Stone and Hamilton and Queen and Roquan, those
keep going.
Those guys are amazing.
Williams, all of them.
I don't think this is going to be a high scoring game, but I'm going to take Mahomes. I mean, how do you go against Patrick Mahomes at this point? I mean.
You just go with the better team, man. And arguably, here's why.
Well, Larry, if it's Niners Chiefs in the Super Bowl, are you telling me you would pick the Chiefs too? Because how could you go against Patrick Mahomes at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that the Chiefs are looking great. I mean, I like Kansas City. I mean, I think it's gonna be really hard for the Niners to beat Kansas City. But Mahomes. I hope Baltimore wins because I think the Niners can beat Baltimore. I'm pretty confident of that. I'm not sure that the Niners can beat Kansas City.
Real quick, if Baltimore wins, Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league, right? And I think that we can talk about. I'm a big Josh Allen guy. I don't know where you guys stand on him. Who's the number 2 quarterback? But somehow quietly, Lamar Jackson is about to get a second MVP. And if he beats Patrick Mahomes in this situation and wins the Super Bowl, you kind of start to look at over the next 10 years that you might have a bit of a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning situation. You've got 2 MVPs for Lamar. He would have beaten Mahomes heads up to go to the Super Bowl. If he wins the Super Bowl, all of a sudden, man, I mean, he's already got a Hall of Fame resume, and he's only just turned 27 in January. I think Lamar Jackson is a very, very good player. He's only improving himself as a passer. The gap between him and Mahomes is not like Mahomes versus the 10th best quarterback in the league. You know what I mean? This gap is not that massive. And when I look at the Ravens, they are stacked, man. That defense, you talk about all 3 levels. They've got all 3 levels. In fact, I think their defense as a whole is better and deeper than Kansas City's. In fact, I think their secondary, as great as those 2 players are in that secondary for Kansas City, give me Baltimore's secondary. When you got Stone, Hamilton, Williams, you've got no.
Matabuke.
No. I'm talking about the secondary. You've got
Humphrey,
Stevens,
Brandon Stevens,
Humphrey,
their nickel corner.
Yeah.
Their nickel
Hamilton,
corner is really, really good.
Mallett.
Then they've got 2 guys on the bench that have started multiple years in this league, even with an injury. Last week, without their best corner, CJ Stroud and the Texans got 3 points on offense. 3. This is not Buffalo's defense. I think the Ravens are going to win this game, but I do think it's going to be close. I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas City wins. I think they're both going to be tough, but man, if you get Lamar Jackson to beat Mahomes, I don't think the difference between Mahomes and Jackson is enough to where it's like, okay, if you didn't think the Niners could beat Mahomes, they definitely are beating Lamar. It's like, well, are they beating Lamar? Because Lamar's like put together a Hall of Fame career almost already at the age of 27 at that point.
They were
Yeah.
Mahomes and
By the way,
Houston was 10-10 at the half.
Go
And
ahead.
also he and Houston's not as good as Kansas City. Also, I think Bolton, I don't see how Lamar's going to run for 100 against a team that's got Nick Bolton. He's just so fast. He's so instinctive. I have a hard time seeing Lamar go for 100 yards against Bolton. And I think Lamar running is a major part of what Baltimore has to do. Baltimore's lost 3 times at home this year. Who did they lose to?
Cleveland,
They lost
Pittsburgh,
to Cleveland.
Pittsburgh.
And I think getting Andrews back is going to be huge this week. I do think he actually plays this week.
They lost to Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and the Colts. Yeah,
But the Pittsburgh game was them benching everybody. That was the last game of the season, right?
Yeah. No. They lost.
No, they lost.
Oh, was that in
season.
Pittsburgh?
Very similar to the Cleveland game where they were up, dominating the game early, and then they came back. Pittsburgh came back on them.
It was.
I know that they had lost to them. Okay. No, not week 1. They beat the Texans week 1.
The Niners played the Steelers week.
Steelers week 1. Yeah.
I think it was week 3 or week 4.
Yeah, they beat the Texans week 1.
Either way, we butchered our mentioning of their secondary. I don't know what I was talking about with McCreary.
It was week 5.
No.
Week 5, yeah.
Yeah, week 5. That was at Pittsburgh.
Either way, we'll have time to further discuss this. Maybe we shouldn't turn this into Ravens Chiefs, or maybe we should. I don't know how people are feeling. Real quick, let's hit a couple supers. Brian Wood says, hello, Vish, Jesse, and Gardner Johnson's agent. I think of CJ. I always think of that 2019 New Orleans game where Kittle burned him for the win. Gardner Johnson's agent, excuse me. What do you have to say about this guy saying this about your client?
When I think of CJ, I always think game where Kittle burned him. CJ Gardner Johnson is a great player. I mean, I'm not saying he's a perfect player, but he's a violent player, and he's going to hit. And if you're the thing about the Niner game, and I don't know how much you guys have talked about it, but I think it's going to be a bloodbath, man. I think that's just going to be an absolute who's the most physical team. Detroit is so physical. And Kirby Joseph and CJ are hitters, and the Niners' weapons. I mean, it's not going to be for the meek. Kittle, any of their receivers, Ayuk, Deebo, JJ. I mean, it's going to be a battle royale, man. It's going to be very, very hard hitting game. It's going to be a double ice bag game. I like the Niners to win because I don't think Detroit can cover the 49er receivers. But and I don't think I'm hoping the 49er defensive tackles win big inside, but there's no doubt Detroit's hard hitting.
Is Jonah
Kirby
Jackson
Joseph looks like Merton Hanks, by the way, in uniform. I just want to throw that out there. He's got a long neck. He does the turtleneck.
Yeah. I kind of see it. Actually. I kind of see it.
And they also have Brian Branch, who's a tremendous talent. So I mean, Cam Sutton and Kindle Vildor should get roasted, and the Niners should be able to win. I think I saw, was it the last 5 opponents have gone for like 345 yards passing or something against Detroit, something like that. I have it in front of me here. But I mean, I like the 49ers to win, but I think it's going to be super, super violent, hard hitting game. 345. Detroit's allowed 345 passing yards or more in 5 straight games. 2 of those games were to Nick Mullins. So that tells me that the Niners, I like this matchup more than I like the Green Bay matchup, but I still think Detroit's going to be hard hitting and it's going to be a violent game.
See, Jesse, any CJ Gardner Johnson thoughts?
I mean, I know Larry loves him. I like him a lot, actually, too, but he'd be the 4th best safety on the Ravens. I'll just throw that out there. I don't know. That's all I'm saying.
He's better than Geno Stone.
Right. You're saying
I don't know. Is he?
I think so.
Geno Stone, out of all the great players, Geno Stone led them in interceptions, did he not?
He's got a good eye. He's got a good eye for the ball. But this guy, CJ Gardner Johnson, runs 4-4. He can play corner, safety, strong safety, free safety, nickelback. I mean, he's
Would you take a punter over him, though?
He's a better athlete than Geno Stone. Geno Stone was like a 7th round pick. He's great nose for the ball. No, he's really heady, but he's not close to the athlete of CJ Gardner.
Do you know that there was a punter taken over CJ Gardner Johnson?
Yeah, the Niners.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. But that's the thing. CJ Gardner Johnson was the MVP of the Outback Bowl as a freshman at Florida. And then he was great for the Saints. And then he went to the Eagles. And then they were in the Super Bowl. And now he's left the Eagles. And suddenly Detroit's 1 win away from the Super Bowl. I mean, none of this is accidental. And if you watched him, he came off the bench. He came off of IR. I think he got a pick in his first game. I mean, he's a big play guy. He can hit you as well as anybody, and then he can also pick off passes. He's a special player.
Jesse, I'm going to start with you for this one. What did you think of Shanahan's explanation of what his end of the half decision was? Maybe we can double whammy this. So Harold is asking us what you thought of his explanation for what he did at the end of the half. We haven't necessarily discussed it. I don't know that it's necessary to beat the dead horse here, especially since we're previewing a different game. But real quick, we can maybe touch on what your thoughts were on what happened at the end of the half versus Green Bay and what you thought of his explanation. And then we'll go to you, Krug.
Yeah, I mean, I understand his explanation, but what's frustrating is when you hear him talk about his explanation, he talks as if the defense shouldn't stop the opposing team if they got the ball with like 30-something seconds left, which is strange to me for a team that's been built around their defense for this many years and relied on that defense. And then he says, well, we would have gone for the touchdown if on second down or whatever, I think it was second down, we had hit the big play, but it just wasn't there. So basically you put your whole drive's touchdown hopes on one big play instead of just trusting Purdy. I mean, I tweeted as the drive was starting and they were going slow. I understand Shanahan wants to bleed the clock here, but I trust Purdy more than I do Moody. And guess what? They missed the kick also. I get it was blocked. I personally think he was the reason it was blocked because it was kicked low and it probably would have gone wide left anyways. That's the way it looked. I didn't like that there. I felt like if you go for a touchdown and you get a touchdown there, then you get the ball to start the second half, that you could put the game away right then and there. And all the last second theatrics, none of that stuff would have been even relevant because the 49ers could have put that thing away much earlier.
Krug, what do you think? And I'm going to take the super off so that we can see your lovely face.
As far as, I mean, I understand. It's like, you don't want to just be like, well, we just do whatever. You want to have a philosophy. And your philosophy, you want to be rooted in something, either your football life experience or, some logical advantage. So I understand Shanahan's desire to have like a theory, but it's too rigid. It's too rigid. The bottom line is, what are you asking me? Are you asking me the question of taking the ball and deferring to the second half, or actually how he called that sequence in this last game?
I think he's asking about his explanation for how he called the sequence.
Yeah, well, it's once again, it's like he's serving multiple masters. I know what he's saying. He's like, well, and he talked about it again today. It's like, I don't want to give them 45 seconds left in the half and then they could potentially score. Well, I thought the whole part of putting all this money in your defensive line was that you could lean on your defense. The way he talks about his defense, he makes his defense sound so fragile. Like, so you're gonna, it's like, there's no way you can stop anybody for 45 seconds at the end of the half. Hargrave has big money. Bosa makes big money. Armstead makes big money. Either you shouldn't have paid those guys all that money, or they're not worth all that money. But I mean, your defense can't play defense for a minute. I mean, I don't get it. To me, just try to score. Don't worry so much about the clock. Let the clock play itself out. Now, if you get down to the 4-yard line and you're starting to worry about, oh, you know what? There's a minute 20 and you want to start bleeding clock at that point because you know you're going to score. Okay, fine. But they're bleeding clock at the beginning. They got the ball with 4:09 left, and they bled 45 seconds in the third minute there, and wound up settling for a long field goal for their kicker in a wet conditions. I mean, it's terrible. Now, I heard his argument. His argument today was like, hey, look, I want to make sure we lead at least 7-6. And then the second thing I want is I want to make sure that it's at least 10-6. And then the third thing I want is I want to make sure that, I wouldn't, I'd like it to be 14-6, but I don't want it to be, 13-6 against me, or 13-7 against me. I don't want to take a chance that I have the lead and I want to make sure I have the lead. Okay, but I mean, that's a tad conservative considering you got a whole half of football to play. I just think he's trying to serve too many masters at one time. It's very difficult to put together a scoring drive. Focus on that first and focus on the clock second. And as far as the decision to defer or not to defer, put your best advantage out there. If your best advantage is your offense against their D, then put your offense out there. If your best advantage is your D against their O, then put your defense out there. In my opinion, the 49ers' best advantage was to put their offense on the field against Green Bay's defense, but they wanted to defer to the second half. So they put their defense out there. So, I just think that he's a little too rigid and he's a little too distracted overall in that whole second quarter, what to do at the end of the second quarter.
The way I see it is, if you believe in your team the way that he should and the way that he probably does, I'm not saying he doesn't believe in them, but worst case scenario actually should be it's 14-9 at halftime. That's worst case scenario, because you go down, you score the touchdown. If you score too quick, well, guess what? Your defense goes on the field. At worst, they're giving up a field goal. So then it's 14-9. You still are gaining that one extra point versus kicking the field goal. So that's the way that I see it. That should be absolute worst case if you are doing things right. Best case scenario, you're up 14-6, and then you start with the ball in the second half, you score again, game's over.
Yeah, I think there's a lot with this discussion, but I think Shanahan specifically is missing the forest, or he's missing the forest and only seeing the trees in this particular case with this. He constantly thinks this is an attack at his philosophy, and he starts defending his philosophy of trying to, double up, which is score at the end of the half and then score at the beginning of the half and try and lap a football team. Or
they did neither in this game.
Right. That stupid stat that he gives is an approximation. He never gives you the actual stat, but he goes, there's like a 95% of teams or something like that win if you end the ball with the half. I don't actually know that exact stat, but I'm going to verify that it's something close to true because he says it and he doesn't really lie, at least about something like that. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. The issue is, while the philosophy is sound, the execution in this particular case versus Green Bay was complete garbage. It was garbage. You have to understand that, okay, they got the ball with 4 minutes left, but they had a minute 19 with 3rd and 2 at the Green Bay 43 when he gave away 45 seconds on the clock. They were on the edge. They ended up kicking a 48-yard field goal. They got like 10 more yards from this spot, basically. Moody kicked the field goal. They were at the 43 of Green Bay when he bled the clock. Moody kicked the field goal from Green Bay's 30, 48-yard field goal. So they got 13 yards, which means that he started bleeding clock when it was going to be a 61-yard field goal for Moody. He started bleeding clock before there was even a possibility that they were in field goal range. He started bleeding clock on 3rd down when they had to reset downs. He's
thinking about their offensive drive, his opponent's offensive drive.
A minute 19 and 3 timeouts with the with the ball in the Green Bay 40, it's criminal to kick a 48-yard field goal and then look at the kicker for not missing it. And then my other issue with it is he goes, no, we did leave enough time and I was aggressive and we called the explosive. And yeah, they did call an explosive play and Brock Purdy turned down a deep crosser to Brandon Ayuk. Now, I think Brock Purdy made one young quarterback-ish mistake on this drive. I don't really blame him for it. I think it's a Shanahan issue, but checking the ball down to Christian McCaffrey in the middle of the field at that point was useless. They got 8 yards to get 10 seconds. Those 8 yards weren't that meaningful. They could have thrown it down 30 and had like 25 seconds on third down if you didn't want to make that throw to Ayuk and had a little bit more time to work with on third down. Doesn't really matter. It's a moot point. This idea that a minute and 19 seconds with 3 timeouts in plus territory should come down to your quarterback making or not making one throw, that's bullshit. That's terrible clock management. He gave away 45 seconds for no reason. It wasn't about Green Bay scoring or anything like that. He gave away 45 seconds because he was scared. And you're right. It's not a priority for him to score in that situation. It's not even a priority for the other team. Could they score? Could they not score? It's a priority not to give them the ball. And that's where I thought this was just horrible clock execution from Shanahan. It's the second worst clock execution I've seen. In these playoffs.
We saw it. McVay. Well, I mean, not only this, I mean, what if let's talk about it worked out in that game, okay? It worked out in that game. Is it going to work out against Patrick Mahomes or Lamar in the Super Bowl? Probably not, because look what happened in the Super Bowl when they played the Chiefs. They got hyper conservative at the end of the half. They wasted a bunch of time. They didn't score, and they got run over in the second half. You're only going to it's the NFL. You only get, 8 to 12 possessions a game. And so it's like, you got to make the most of them. There's a reason why the teams that win typically score touchdowns in the red zone, because there aren't that many red zone trips. You can't settle for 3. You got to go for 4. And turnovers are vital in the NFL, bigger than college, because there's not 15 or 17 possessions. There's 8 to 12. And in a ball control game, there might be 8. So, the Niners only had 3 possessions, I believe, in the first half. What happens in this super conservative game plan when you get run over by Mahomes in 2 weeks in the Super Bowl because, your defense can't shut them out for the entire game? I understand the need to have a philosophy because it's like, hey man, I'm playing 21 in Vegas. Do I hit on 16? Do I not? Do I split aces? Do I double down? You want to have some philosophy and rule and play the odds long term, but I think it really should be predicated on your opponent's ability to score points, how the game's going, maybe even the weather. There's other factors here that, and I think to me, it's like, it's so hard to score in the NFL anyway. Just focus on scoring and worry about the burning of the clock at the very end and see if you can burn. Don't try to get into this. It reminds me of like a hard out in radio where they say, hey, Larry, I want you to break at 8:16:47. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Yeah, so I can't break at 8:16:46 and I can't break at 8:16:48. No, it's a hard out. Well, it's just trying to be that exact. It doesn't create for the best radio because you're sitting there going, I can't break early, I can't break late, so I have to break exactly on time. You know what I'm saying? So all of a sudden it's like, is it the best radio segment ever? No, because you're got this hard break right in the middle of it. And it's like he's trying to serve too many masters. I don't want to just score. I want to score inside of 20 seconds. So then they have it and they can just take a knee. What happened to your awesome defense? How about this? Don't play a bend but don't break. Just challenge them. Play another, they act like they cannot give the opposition 50 seconds on the clock without them scoring a touchdown. I almost feel like he might be a little scarred from the Jordan Addison the zero blitz play in Minnesota. They're so worried about that. And I get it. It's a huge momentum negative if the other team scores in the last 10 seconds of the half. But you have a great defense. Play defense for 10 seconds.
But is it not a momentum negative to have the ball in Green Bay territory with a minute and 19 seconds left and 3 timeouts and come away with 0 points? Jesse, I'll kick it to you with this, because what Krug describes to me is an issue for the 49ers, right? Because when we're talking about limiting possessions in a football game, I actually think in some ways it's disadvantageous. Excuse me. I can't talk today. It's disadvantageous towards the 49ers. And here's why. They have the more talented team on the field. Most of the time, they were more talented than Green Bay. I know Green Bay played a phenomenal game, but the Niners had objectively more talent than Green Bay. When you have objectively more talent and you're reducing the margins of your team because you're battling the clock like this, now one throw that Brock Purdy doesn't make to Brandon Ayuk becomes the meaningful difference between points and no points in a half. In a half where you had a minute and 19 seconds and the ball in plus territory on the precipice of field goal range, and it came down to one throw. Do you think Shanahan's conservatism in these particular situations is actually affecting his team's opportunity because he's increasing the margins for them to be perfect?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I said it on Saturday after the game. I still feel this way 5 days later. That team on that day, I'm not saying that Kyle's a bad coach. I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm about to say. Kyle's a fantastic coach. But on that day, he didn't have his best stuff. And I feel like the 49ers overcame Kyle to win that game. And that cannot happen. As a head coach, you cannot be the reason that your team potentially loses. And we talked about it. I like the philosophy. I like to get the ball to start the second half. I agree with the philosophy. But how do you implement said philosophy is what's important. Vish, we were talking earlier before Larry came on. We were talking about Baker Mayfield. And we were saying, hey, we're not saying he's not intelligent, but applying that in the moment when things get pressure or when the pressure starts to bake up is something he's not great at. That's the way Shanahan is. Shanahan is so smart. He's got the best play designs. He can put together a hell of a game plan. But man, when the pressure moments hit and things aren't the way he expected them to go, he can't apply them. And it's the strangest thing to me. That's why I'm hoping that Brock Purdy getting that comeback and kind of bailing him out in that scenario allows him to be a little bit more free, because you're right. The philosophy is fantastic, but somehow that philosophy stopped you from scoring zero. You scored 0 points. You came out of the half, you went 3 and out, and you settled for a long field goal. That's what the philosophy got you. It didn't do anything in that game. It puts you behind the 8 ball is what it did.
Absolutely. And standing behind the philosophy, and this is where I got frustrated with him a little bit this week. Not really frustrated, it's like, why are you answering the question like this? Because standing behind the philosophy is like a coach, who learned from Bill Walsh, runs the West Coast offense. And when his offense isn't doing well, he goes, well, this is Bill Walsh's offense. This is a good philosophical offense. This is the West Coast offense. Yeah, you can have a good philosophy. You can have the right idea, but it comes down to execution. And that execution, the way he executed it at the end of that half was terrible. He gave away 45 seconds for nothing.
Well, not only that, they cannot and don't ever play fast. And so why not? It was an 11-play drive where they went 45 yards in 4 minutes and 4 seconds. They had a touchdown drive that was 12 plays the drive before that went 5:48. They had a touchdown drive in the third quarter that went 4 plays and 75 yards in a minute 48.
You're right.
I mean, they had a 7-play field goal drive that went 7 plays, 14 yards in 2 minutes. But my point is, you didn't move the ball and you wasted a bunch of time. And then you're telling me when they got the ball that he was thinking to himself, man, 4 minutes and 9 seconds left. Hopefully we can get a long Jake Moody field goal attempt in the rain. Really? 409, Shanahan's off. Play fast, play aggressive. You've got weapons, roll downhill and speed it up a little bit. Do they have a hurry up? You may need a hurry up at some point. You may be behind. They can't hurry up. They don't have a hurry up.
Like a play faster, Krug, like against the clock. I think they need a hurry up from the standpoint. This is something that I saw Green Bay do, and this is something the Niners used to do that I haven't seen them do. Is okay. Brock Purdy couldn't get a rhythm in that game. Green Bay, every time they had momentum, they would get on the ball quickly and make the Niners defense keep playing snap after snap. Like, get a big play, quickly line up, get on the ball, and try to use the momentum of the previous play to get a rhythm and get a kind of flow and get the defense guessing. The Niners offense never seems to do that. And Shanahan used to be the master of variable snaps, getting you in defensive looks where they're not going to let you out of a formation. They're not going to let you sub because they're going to go fast. Like, these were all the things they measured in and did so well in Atlanta. And for whatever reason, he's turned into this, let me reduce the number of possessions in the game as much as possible and try to control every variable of it. It's an easier game to play in the regular season. It's a lot more dangerous when teams sell out to stop the staples of your offense. And when your offense can't get going, which is what happened to the Niners offense in that first half, you have a very disjointed first half where it's difficult for you to get going at all at any point.
And where's the consistency? So I agree with you. When you've got the better team, you want more possessions. When you have the worst team, or you're outgunned, or I don't know, maybe you're in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, and maybe you don't have a quarterback, and maybe that's the time to sit on the ball and go slow and just go into the locker room down 7. But in that situation, he got super aggressive with Josh Johnson and then turned it over and then was down 21-7.
He was hurt.
Right. So, I mean, you're going with Josh Johnson and you're down 7 in that game. To me, you want to be down 7 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So if you just absolutely did nothing in that end of the half thing, I would be like, you know what? Probably smart. He's shortening the game because he knows he doesn't have as good of a team. It's like, why, when you watch college basketball years ago and they went to the Dean Smith 4 quarters, the worst teams ran clock against the better teams to shorten the game so they would have a chance to win, fewer possessions. Shanahan tries to shorten the game when he's got the better team, and then he gets aggressive when he's got the obviously subpar team. So there's no, I don't want to hear about a philosophy. There's no philosophy. He's all over the map.
Jesse, any thoughts?
Well, he's absolutely right. He chooses the strangest times. He did this with Jimmy when Jimmy would get hurt. It's like all of a sudden he trusts the backup more. He did it last year with Purdy, and he did it this year. They went hurry up with Sam Darnold. That's who they went hurry up with.
Right.
He coaches Brock Purdy for all the great things he says about Purdy. For all of us who have eyes and watch Brock Purdy, knowing he's much better than Jimmy Garoppolo, he sure does coach as if he's Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, that's the bottom line. He coaches as if he's got a quarterback with a handicap, and that's not a way to coach. You can't do that. And really, big picture, this is what I see. I know that we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Is it not just the quarterback though? Does he not coach like he doesn't have a premier offense filled with multiple All-Pro players?
Yeah, absolutely. But big picture, what I see, and I don't want to get in. I don't want to necessarily get into Super Bowl talk as if it's already done. But assuming the 49ers make it, it doesn't matter what team comes out of the AFC. We just had a nice, good back and forth about the AFC and how good these teams are. The 49ers, realistically, don't have the better defense out of the teams that they're going to face. They don't have the better quarterback, and they don't have the better coach. So how do they win that game? I don't know. 2 weeks, we're going to find out. I mean, we're going to talk about it for 2 weeks and hopefully talk ourselves into it as fans, but that's the reality of the situation. And if Kyle, who is a very good coach, starts to handicap his own team, they've got zero shot in that game.
Right. I'm with both of you guys there. Krug, something we touched on before you got here that maybe I want to get your quick thoughts on is Rashawn Gary had a ton of success against Colton McKivitz. Obviously, we know Rashawn Gary's an excellent player. Any worries for you with Aiden Hutchinson?
Yeah, absolutely. The guy's got
I did not expect that. I'm sorry. That was just like, oh my God, are you even asking me this?
I mean, the guy's got 8 sacks in 4 games. He's got a ridiculous motor. But they're going to slide the protection to help Colton. I mean, I talked to Colton about him today. He's fully aware of the challenge. He knows. I mean, this guy plays incredibly hard. He's such a key leader on their team Hutchinson is, that he really gets the rest of that group to play really hard. He's going to get most of his snaps against McKivitz, but, the 49ers are going to help McKivitz. They're going to have backs chip. They're going to have a second guy waiting. The one thing is that you can do that here. If I were the 49ers, I would slide the coverage to McKivitz all day and say, Big Trent, go one-on-one with Pascal or Kaminsky all day, and you handle that guy one-on-one all night long or all afternoon long, and because we're going to spend all day helping Colton with Hutchinson. And that's where I think it's also advantage 49ers, because even though Hutchinson's terrific, this is the weakness of the Lions, is that they don't have a complete line yet. They've got a really good player in Hutchinson, and then after next year's draft, they may have a really great counterbalance. But Aleem McNeil's decent, but Kaminsky is a big, he's almost like a 5 technique guy. I mean, these are big-bodied guys that don't burn the edges. Pascal's kind of a little bit heavier too, and I think Trent can handle them one-on-one. So even though it looks bad on paper, because they don't have an opposite counterpart to Hutchinson, I think you slide the protection to McGlinchey, you chip Aiden Hutchinson, you have a second guy there, and you frustrate him and let Trent go one-on-one, and I think it will work.
Sounds good. Jesse, anything more you wanted to add on Aiden Hutchinson?
No, I think we covered it earlier in the show.
All right. Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm really struggling here with the congestion. The cold is pretty bad. I don't know if there's anything more you guys want to touch on, or maybe we can call this here as a shorter show. Krug, you seem bewildered down there. Well, what's up with you? You got anything else?
I'm shocked. I mean, I'm just totally shocked. I'm
well
expecting,
under the weather, my friend.
I'm expecting War and Peace, and I got a short story. I was expecting, a long 3-hour movie with an intermission, and instead I got a quickie. I got a quickie and a note. But no, I'm just joking, Fish. Of course, if you're not feeling good, no sweat, and you know how much I love streaming with you guys, and any length of time is always good. I would just say that one thing, and I don't know how much you guys talk Lions, but the Lions are such an interesting team to me because they do have 8 great players, between Sewell and Ragnow and Gibbs and Laporta and Amon-Ra on offense, and then Hutchinson, Chauncey Gardner, Brian Branch on defense. And I'm so impressed by their general manager, and I'm so impressed by where they've come in a short amount of time. But I really think that Detroit's going to be happy, win or lose. The 49ers are only going to be happy with a win. They'll be devastated by a loss. And I know that is not really a football factor, but it's just human nature. And I just think that 49ers, I think, have a lot of advantages in this game. I don't think the Lions corners can hang with the Niners receivers. I don't think Aiden Hutchinson is going to be able to dominate all by himself because he doesn't have a good enough line around him. And I feel good about the 49ers' chances. I think Brock's going to play better this week. I think the conditions will be a little bit better. And I like the 49ers to win this game. I don't think it's going to be easy, but this team reminds me a little bit, this Lions team, of the 85 Bears, in that the 85 Bears in 84 went to Dallas, smoked Dallas, and looked awesome in that previous round. Came to Candlestick against a team that was really much further advanced than them, got shut out, I think 23-0. And then, then the next year was like, watch out for the 85 Bears. They could not be beat. Mm-hmm. And I would not be surprised if this is a similar type thing where Detroit gets outclassed here, but with another off season, if their general manager has another big time off season, the Lions could be too much for everybody next year, including the Niners. So that's how I kind of see this one. I think this is the Lions a little bit before their time. I like the Niners to win this game, but watch the heck out for Detroit next year, because they are coming like gangbusters, and their core is spectacular, and I think it's going to get nothing but better. So there, that's kind of how I see it. I like the Niners to win the game, but I definitely see the Bears. Definitely see the Lions coming on, kind of like I saw the Bears coming on in '84.
I like that. Jesse, we've got a couple super chats directed directly at you. So Elite Archer 23 says, so Jesse is really saying Brock is expendable. Can't be that Kyle might not be as great as people make him out to be. Kyle is only a legend in his own mind. So this isn't really directed at Jesse. This is kind of a general point at Kyle Shanahan. Hey, Kyle Shanahan, if you're listening, you're only a legend in your mind. But
why is he saying that you're saying that Brock?
Yeah, that's where.
That's where I'm confused. Yeah. I gotta because I said the exact opposite. I said that I just said that he saved Kyle, and that Kyle acts as if Jimmy G is at quarterback and he's handicapped at that position. Okay. I didn't say that. Brock, I don't think he's
understand the context of why the question came in. Go ahead.
I don't think he's asking me like why I said it. I think he was just saying like, hey, he's just basically saying like in Kyle's mind he's expendable, but he's only great. He's only a legend in his own mind. You know what I mean? At least that's the way I read it, but I could be wrong.
Elite Archer 23, appreciate the donation. I did not read that correctly originally. And then John Gonzalez, this is a little more direct, Jesse. He says, if it's a 49ers Ravens in the Super Bowl and either team wins, will you rub it in your son's face, or and vice versa, will he rub it in yours?
No, we'll definitely be cordial. I mean, my son's 9. I'm not gonna. What am I gonna?
Yeah, what do you? Yeah.
You know what I mean? Absolutely not.
But
He's.
I
will say this. No, I don't think so. He. I watched the Texans game with him, and the halftime was 10-10. You should have seen like the despair on this poor kid's face. Like he thought the Ravens were going to lose. He really, I'd have like pump him up. I'm like, listen, the Ravens are fine. They're going to win. They're a better second half team. They're good. They're going to win the game, son. And he was just so defeated. So watching the 49ers beat them in the Super Bowl, I think he'll just be, I mean, I can't add to that. There's no way. I'd be a horrible father for that.
I gotta relate with the story. So my youngest kid is 14, right? And you know how there's whatever Facebook or whatever that like will be like, here's a memory from 5 years ago on this day, right? Or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we got that last week. Here's a memory from 5 years ago on this day. And he's 14. So he was Jesse's kid's age, basically. This was like the first Super Bowl. I think it might have been Denver and Carolina. Was that basically 5 years ago? I don't know.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay, so he decided that he was going to root for Cam Newton and the Panthers. And of course, we all know how it ended, right? Denver beat the Panthers. And we have this video of my 9-year-old just coming unglued. Like, I thought he's like, he's borderline in tears and, rooting for a team that he doesn't really know anything about. But it was like the first Super Bowl, and he couldn't handle it because I think I had bet Denver, and I think a couple of my older sons were rooting for Denver. So he was like the only person in the room rooting for Carolina, and they were losing, and he got overwhelmed by the emotion of it. And looking back at it, I mean, it's cute as hell. I mean, I'm sitting there and, it's awesome. Sports is awesome for moments like that, for 9-year-olds to, be able to get so wrapped up in something that it's like larger than life. So, yeah, I don't think Jesse's going to be rubbing it in his 9-year-old's face. You always were extra worried,
too. You were always extra worried, too, if you did a little too much talking at school, right? And for me, the best memory I could relate with this, I think I mentioned a couple of times, Michael Crabtree used to be my favorite player. Like when he was at Texas Tech, like he was that guy. And I wanted the 49ers to so badly draft him. But like my college heroes when I was a kid at that time, like the Niners never drafted. Like I thought Reggie Bush, because him and Alex Smith played in high school together, like this is going to be a thing. And Reggie Bush goes second overall. Like it just doesn't happen. Crabtree falls to 10th in that draft. My dad gets me, I think, for my 9th or 10th birthday, I got a Michael Crabtree jersey. Every Monday in middle school, the Niners are good with Jim Harbaugh. I'm repping that Michael Crabtree jersey. Life is good. Life is dandy. And then Richard Sherman blasts him on national television to Aaron Andrews. I probably got called a sorry receiver there by all my buddies and all of that, just because it's like, hey, this kid wears a Crabtree jersey. It's all good natured, but like, man, that was tough. I think that's probably, I've had the sick to my stomach. I've had the bad feelings, but I think that was the one reduced to tears because I wanted them to beat, like, it meant so much to me for them to beat Seattle. And I really thought it was that year with Aldon Smith recovering a fumble on the first play of the game and all of that. We don't need to rehash it. Harold McAllister says Sudafed fund. This is unreal.
Sudafed's strong, man. Be careful if you're taking Sudafed.
I got Vicks vapor inhaler with me, Larry, and it's doing.
They can turn that stuff into meth, can't they? Isn't that I think the stuff that they ban in Portland? Yeah. I think
seriously,
turn it into meth.
No, seriously, I mean, burn it on a spoon or something. But I don't. I've always wondered, Vish. Mm-hmm. How do you get a cold in like freezing conditions like Chicago? How do you ever get rid of it?
Dude, I have no clue. Usually
you have to keep going outside, right?
Drinking water. I just keep drinking water. And eventually my nose turns from just like congestion to like it just starts getting all runny. And then I'm runny. Like I got a runny nose for 2 days, 3 days. And then it just eventually goes away. I'm in just like the absolute blockade congestion. So like terrible. I'm putting in effort to breathe right now. So it's not great. But Larry, we did have a question for you from T. Breezy, excuse me. He says, hey, Larry, the 49ers win the Super Bowl. Will you ask Kyle Shanahan, will he give Trey Lance an honorary ring? He deserves it.
It's so funny.
Zero chance.
In others, there's zero chance. There's zero chance I would ask it and zero chance that he would just laugh. But it's funny. Other sports, I don't, if you played like, if you were there for like 1 day of spring training and the team wins the World Series, you're like getting a playoff share.
Right.
And the veterans usually vote on that, but I think in football, there's nothing like that. But I would feel bad for Trey because, I mean, he was here. He put in a lot, and I'm sure he's emotionally invested in the lives of a lot of these players. And if you don't think these guys are invested, Azeez Al-Shaair was at the Green Bay game, So
I was going to say, a guy like Trey Lance, he was here. He was drafted to be something. He didn't end up being that, but he wasn't really part of the journey in building this. For me, a guy like Jimmy Ward, a guy who went through it, was a guy who was part of winning it. Like that's the kind of guy I would feel bad for not being there when they get a ring because he was integral in them building what they have built so far. And so that's one thing I would say.
But I mean, this guy, but think of the difference though. Jimmy took a payday and bolted and was gone like last year in February. Trey went through the offseason, studied their playbook, was there for minicamp, was there for all the install of camp, all the offensive install, all the meetings, all of that, and just got lopped off like right before opening night. I mean, literally right before the final preseason game. So in some ways it's like,
No, I get that. It is different. But I feel like when you say Jimmy just took a payday and left, it removes the fact that Jimmy took less money in 2019. Jimmy played corner for them in 2018. Jimmy played safety in 2019.
Yeah.
Jimmy played
Jimmy's a warrior too.
In 2022, yeah.
Jimmy, hey, let's be honest. Jimmy left some of his, Jimmy played for keeps, I mean, in some ways I would feel much better about their chances if they still had Jimmy. I mean, he was just super tough and he
in a game like this, right? Versus an Amon-Ra St. Brown when it comes to tackling a Jahmyr Gibbs in the open field.
He played for
And
blood, man. That guy was nasty. He told me in an interview, I'm sure you can find it on my YouTube page somewhere.
Mhm.
He's like, sometimes you hit a guy in his ribs, and sometimes you hit a guy in his patella, and he doesn't move all that well after that. And he's like,
Crazy.
and he's saying it, he's like smiling. And I'm like, Jimmy, you're my kind of guy, man. You're my kind of football player. I mean, he's that Jimmy. There was a nastiness to Jimmy that was awesome.
Speaking of Jimmy, why not get Jimmy G a ring, huh?
No. And elite archers in the same boat as you, Jesse. Add Tim Rattay and Giovanni Carmazzi.
Hey, why not?
While we're on the topic of safeties, I will ask you this. Logan Ryan has not obviously been the best. He's a little bit older, aging player, right? Yeah, not the best. Nice way to put it, right? But Jerod Brown also, while he's a young, talented player, there's a reason they put Logan Ryan on that field in front of him. They're still uncertain about certain things with him. We have seen him make a few mistakes early in coverage. And, that tackle that Logan Ryan didn't make on Aaron Jones in the alley, well, we've seen Jerod Brown struggle in the alley at times as well. One, have we just, because nobody talks about the Talanoa Hufanga injury, right? Have we just completely diminished the fact that his impact, his ability to fit the run, how aggressive he could be, how much he could hit, how that's affected this team, one? And then two, in a game where both safeties are going to be asked to make open field tackles, both safeties are going to be in a lot of tough spots in coverage against Amon-Ra St. Brown, against Sam Laporta over the middle of the field. Does it worry you that the Niners, obviously one corner in this game, I'm not too worried about Ambry Thomas. They don't really use Jameson Williams like that, or Josh Reynolds, whoever ends up lining up on the outside really like that. But does it worry you? Do the Niners safeties worry you at all?
Yes.
A little bit. Yeah, they have to, right? Go ahead.
I'm majorly worried.
Oh.
I mean, you're going against Montgomery and Gibbs, and you have Gibson and Logan Ryan. Gibson wants no part of any kind of run defense. He's strictly just he's a ball hawking center fielder. He's not a great cover guy. He's not great against the run. He ain't great. I mean, he's just not. They had Ward and Tart, and then they had Hufanga, and now they're down to Gibson, who's not very good, can't keep his feet, not very good against the run. And he's really only the thing that he's dependable on is if the ball's tipped in the air, he'll probably come down with it. And then Logan Ryan, my God. I mean, Logan Ryan couldn't stand in front of Aaron Jones. You think he's going to stand in front of David Montgomery? I mean, they have to make a change there. And I said it to Wilkes today. I said, are you going to stay with Logan Ryan? I mean, are you going to
say it like that?
I mean, I really, you know what? I wanted to ask the question like this. Start Jerod Brown. Agree? I seriously would wanted to ask it that way because that's how I felt I wanted to ask it. But I don't think they've got a prayer of stopping Montgomery if they play Logan Ryan. Logan Ryan was, the effort that he showed on that Aaron Jones long run, he barely got a finger on him. He's got to be the guy that detonates on the guy. I mean, he was the guy. Everybody talks about, the run D is not good. And immediately they start talking about D linemen and setting the edge. How about the safeties? The safeties are the guys that make a lot of those run plays. And I mentioned to Wilkes, I'm like, are you going to go? You're going to stay with Logan Ryan or are you going to switch to Jair? And he's like, well, first of all, Logan Ryan isn't the only guy who's had problems against the run. We all need to get better against the run. I'm like, okay, now, it's the United way.
You didn't say anything about run D. You just asked who you're starting at safety.
Right. Well, but I mean, no, because I said, I said, okay, Aaron Jones ran up and down the field on you guys. And I go, Logan Ryan looked kind of bad on some of those Aaron Jones runs. And he's like, well, first of all, it's not all, Aaron, it's not all him, it's not all Logan Ryan. We all need to get better. So I'm like, okay, great. That sounds so silly to hear that from a professional coach. But then he was like, well, and we haven't decided yet, who's going to play and who's going to start and who's going to. So, I mean, come on. Based on my eyes tell me they're going back to Jerod Brown, and they better go back to Jerod Brown or they're going to be in a world of hurt. They'll either go back to Jerod Brown before the game or they will yank Logan Ryan in the middle of the game. But there's no way. The only way, what I would do in this game, and tell me what you guys think of this. Because I thought he was going to turn it on me. I thought he was going to say, "What would you do?" kind of a thing. And so I had to think of
you were ready.
I was ready because Shanahan's done that to me before. So I want to be ready. So it's like I have an answer. So I said, I'm thinking to myself, if he turns this on me and says, "What would you do, Mr. Know-It-All?" I would have said I would start with Jerod Brown and use him. And if you get a lead and take away their run game and make it a passing game in the second half, then I'll take Brown off the field and replace him with Logan Ryan, who's a corner. And that's the way I would play it. And that's the way I would play it because I don't think they got a prayer in hell of stopping Montgomery with Logan Ryan or Gibson.
Like Jesse?
No, I agree, but it is interesting, right? Because Jerod Brown suited up, but they almost acted like as if he was still hurt enough to not necessarily start. Is the way that they kind of danced around it. So I don't know how much of it was he wasn't as healthy as they had hoped, and they're ramping him up this week and see if he can go fully. And he was just kind of like an emergency player. I don't know. That's just the way that they talked. But if he suits up, you got to assume he's healthy enough to play. That was the wrong move, and this wasn't hindsight. Literally, second play of the game, I noticed it and tweeted it out, and I said, interesting to not go with Jerod Brown here. Logan Ryan starting. Okay, we'll see how this goes.
It was extra interesting, not to interrupt you, sorry, but Brown literally told us during the week that he was going to start.
Yeah.
Shanahan said, hey, he's a rookie, and he hasn't played in a month, and they were high stakes. So in other words, they got nervous and they went with the guy they thought was the safer guy. Now, here's also the thing. I think Green Bay, when they thought of Green Bay, they thought, you know what? Green Bay's got a lot of passing weapons. They got a lot tight ends. They got receivers. They got depth of receivers. We need to go with the DB corner coverage guy. Okay, but now you're going up against a group that really runs it with two excellent running backs who are, you have to tackle the running backs. They have one receiver in Amon-Ra, but they don't have a bevy of 6 or 5 or whatever. They've got, a couple of guys. So I think last week it made more sense to go with Ryan. This week it makes more sense to go with Brown. And I think I don't think they're fools. I think they're going to go with Brown.
I don't think that
go ahead. Yeah, go
ahead. I don't think it made more sense to go with Ryan. I mean,
I could see the argument though. I get
the
passing game being more, like, do you need him to stop Aaron Jones? Well, maybe not.
I think we're looking at Logan Ryan as if this was like a couple years ago. Logan Ryan, Jerod Brown seemingly is around the ball quite a bit.
Yeah,
regardless, right? And not only a hitter, but he gets his hands on the football as well. I mean, he could have had a couple picks. I think it was the Washington game, but Fred stole one. So
he's a productive interceptor.
That's exactly it. That's my point. So what does Logan Ryan bring in the passing game? Maybe a little bit more consistency in coverage, I guess, but I don't think he's necessarily the better coverage player at this stage in his career. I think that not playing Jerod Brown was a mistake then, and I can't see them making that mistake in this game, but we'll see.
If Jerod Brown
was safer eyes. He brings safer eyes.
Yeah, he's more reliable to be in the right spot. But I mean, Here's the thing. If Jerod Brown were just a dude, that'd be one thing, but he's not. He's going to be a foundational piece for you going forward. 1 and 2, I don't want to ever lean on guys who I pulled off a cruise ship. If you're taking a cruise and I've got to call you, your mind is somewhere else. I'm not leaning too much on a guy who's on a cruise.
Wow. The Rams picked Derek Weddle off a cruise and he won him a Super Bowl playing safety.
Was he on a cruise?
Nah, I don't know.
No, he wasn't on a cruise.
He was just out playing. I wanted to be annoying there. Go ahead.
Nothing says I'm retired and onto my next motivation. Like I'm on a cruise ship eating desserts and, come on. I mean, there's been nobody who stepped off a cruise ship and that did awesome things in a playoff. I'd be willing to guess that.
Yeah, probably. Although the Yachtdale Boat Club group almost did pull it off back in the day. with them going through that boat on Miami. Anything else, guys? We touched on the safeties. Krueg, I'm trying to think what Jesse and I maybe hit before you got here. We talked about Amon-Ra covering him. Do you guys, I mean, Jesse, I'll go to you. Okay, wait. Elite Archer is coming to you right again. He says, Jesse, I can't see them making the same mistake twice. He says, hold my beer.
Yeah, good call, Elite Archer. Good call.
You got anything else on this game? I know you've been doing it behind enemy lines. You've been doing a variety of shows this week. We heard Krueg's full output on this game. What's your, total thoughts just in entirety? Anything we missed? Anything you find interesting that we haven't touched on?
I guess the one thing is that I was thinking earlier when you and I were talking, and then as Larry was talking again, it brought up the thought to me of we were talking about things that kind of concern us a little bit. When we were talking about Kyle's conservative nature, Dan Campbell's the polar opposite of Kyle Shanahan. And that, I don't know if I want that necessarily in my head coach because it can be a little bit nerve-wracking when you're going for it on fourth down at your own 35 in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. But when you've got a team that really is kind of playing with house money at this point, I mean, Detroit has come in and done everything that their fan base had hoped for. Anything from here on out would just be icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So the way that I see it is Dan Campbell, who already coaches very loose, that's scary to go against because it's unpredictable. You feel like, oh, it's 3rd and 3. They try, they went for the pass. They didn't get it. It's 4th and 3. You're getting the ball back. Well, not necessarily. And even if they show punt, you're not necessarily getting the ball back because they'll fake it there. Then if they get a touchdown, they might go for 2. That loose style of coaching is something that can take the Lions out of it very, very early, or it could keep them in this game longer than what they should be, and that can make things interesting. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. It could be a negative for them, but it also is scary to go against because this team plays like they have nothing to lose, and he coaches like they have nothing to lose, even when they do have things to lose, like the 2nd seed against Dallas. He doesn't care.
Right. Yeah, and that's where this game could be made closer than it needs to be with the talent. Mm-hmm. When you have Shanahan, who's not going to take those risks, even though he has the better team, and then you have Campbell, who's going to go for broke, he might be able to get his team advantages in the areas of the game that talent can't necessarily overcome. And so that to me would be an interesting variable. By the way, for any tennis fans out there, Jannik Sinner is up a double break in the 2nd set on Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open. He's a set away. This is huge.
Look at you with your Australian Open. I agree with Jesse though wholeheartedly. This team, and if I was Shanahan or Wilkes or any of the leaders on this team, I would say before this game, hey guys, we can't play not to lose. This team's going to play on the edge. They're the guy walking around the casino that won $45,000 at noon, and they've got all of the casino's money in their pocket, and they're feeling loose, and they're playing fast and loose because they got $45,000 of casino money in their pocket. That's this team. So what I would say is, play smart, tilt the coverage towards Amon-Ra, tilt the protection towards Aiden Hutchinson, and then play a lot more games up front. Move your guys around. The Niners have not been stunting and twisting nearly like they normally have in the second half of the year. Why? Because they've gone up against a lot of mobile quarterbacks that they're worried about keeping hemmed in the pocket, and they don't want to give anybody an obvious rush lane. Jared Goff has, I think, his biggest rush day this year is like 10 yards or 11 yards. He ain't going anywhere. And they've got some new faces on their offensive line. If Ragnow's not starting, that's going to be dramatic. But even
Jonah Jackson might be out.
If Jonah Jackson's out, make the one thing that the stunts and the twist require the O-line to do is communicate and make them. I'd run all kinds of exotics, A-gap pressures, all kinds of stunts and twists. Get pressure in the A-gap on Goff and have him not knowing where the protection or where the rushers are coming from. Get a couple of hits from where he's looking. this way and he gets hit and he doesn't see it coming. A couple of hits like that will make him fold up his tent. I really believe that. The stat that I'll give you guys that I think is the most interesting this week, Goff under pressure this year. He completes around 53% of his passes, 6 touchdowns, 9 picks. Goff in a clean pocket, 70 to 7. Somebody had 70.5. Somebody else had 76%. He's completing over 70% with 27 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Making him feel pressure is the number one key in this game. If he feels it, you'll win. If he doesn't feel it, he could stay hot and beat you.
100% agree. And I think they got to hit him early and they got to make him feel bodies, like you said, especially by loading the line of scrimmage and make him play a little quicker, because we've seen throughout his career that that's an issue he has. Guys, I think that's the show. Really great show. We'll be back with the big show featuring myself, Jessie Naylor, who will be going to the game, like we mentioned. So he'll have some extra details to share about his time in Santa Clara, his time on the field. He can tell us the condition of the grass, a few other details that are very exclusive. And then Larry Krueger, where we will be next week on the Krueg Show, on Larry's channel, hopefully talking Super Bowl Media Week, hopefully previewing the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This was a fun show. Hopefully my nasal congestion will have recovered by next week, because this was not too fun for me to do this with a blockade on my nose. But we will be back. Thanks again. See you next week.